The gravel crunched under my boots like brittle bones as dusk settled heavy over the ridge. I had been out mending fence wire, the kind of work that quiets the mind, when the sputtering started. Low and ragged, cutting through the evening's hush like a cough in church. My solitude shattered. A beat-up truck veered off the county road, tires kicking dust onto my land, headlights slicing the fading light. No cell bars out here, miles from anything, and clouds boiled black on the horizon, promising a storm that had turned paths to mud. I wiped sweat from my brow, grabbed my jacket, and headed toward it. The engine coughed one last time and died. I approached slow, the air already thickening with the scent of rain-damp earth. The truck sat crooked in the bar ditch, its hood tilted up like a wounded animal's head. A woman climbed out from the driver's side, slamming the door hard enough to echo off the distant hills. She was city-bred, that much was clear. Jeans too new, boots polished but unscuffed, hair pulled back in a ponytail that caught the last gray light. Frustration etched her face, lines tight around her mouth as the first fat drops hit her shoulders, soaking through her light jacket. She turned at my footsteps, eyes narrowing against the gloom. "You live around here?" Her voice carried over the wind, picking up, sharp but edged with something softer, like she was holding back a plea. I nodded, keeping distance. The ranch stretched out behind me, acres of scrub and sage that I'd claimed for their emptiness. "Yeah, this is my land. You lost?" "More than lost." She kicked the tire, gravel scattering. "Engine just quit. Was heading to some town called Willow Creek. Said it was the next stop for gas. But this road? It just kept going." Rain dotted her cheeks now, mixing with what might have been sweat or worry. She glanced at the sky, clouds rolling in like a herd stampeding. Willow Creek was a good 20 miles west, through washes that flooded easy. No tow trucks this far out, especially not with night falling. I felt the pull of my cabin, the fire I'd planned to light, the quiet that wrapped around me like an old quilt. But duty tugged harder. "Pop the hood, I'll take a look." She fumbled with the latch inside, the metal groaning as it released. I rounded to the front, my calloused palms pressing against the warm hood as I lifted it. The engine stared back, a tangle of wires and grime, oil still slick from whatever had fried it. Her hands had gripped that wheel tight. I could see the white marks fading on her knuckles as she stood beside me, arms crossed against the chill seeping in. "Name's Lena," she said, unprompted, like the silence needed filling. "Just passing through. Needed a break from the city noise." I grunted, not offering mine yet. The air hummed with tension, the kind that builds before thunder. My fingers traced the battery cables, loose and corroded, but it was deeper. The alternator whined in my mind's ear, probably seized. Rain picked up, pattering on the hood like impatient fingers. "Battery's low. Might be the starter. You got jumper cables?" She shook her head, water dripping from her lashes. "No, nothing like that. I wasn't planning on this." Her voice cracked a fraction, eyes flicking to the empty road. The isolation hit her then, I could tell, the way her shoulders drew in, like the land was closing around us both. I straightened, wiping grease on my jeans. The shed was a quarter-mile back, tools scattered in the dim light there. Part of me wanted to point her toward the main road, let her wait for a miracle. Solitude was my armor, forged in years of wind-whipped winters and sun-baked summers. But the storm brewed fiercer, lightning flickering silent over the peaks. Leaving her here would be cruel, like abandoning a calf in a flash flood. "Wait here," I said finally. "I'll fetch what I need from the shed." She nodded, relief mixing with wariness in her stance. I trudged back, boots sinking in softening ground, the weight of intrusion settling in my gut. The shed door creaked open, tools clanging as I grabbed wrenches, a multimeter, spare cables coiled like snakes. By the time I returned, rain sheeted down, turning the gravel to slick mud. Lena huddled under the truck's meager shelter, arms wrapped tight. We worked in bursts, me under the hood, her holding the flashlight beam steady, her hands trembling from cold. Water traced paths down her neck, soaking her shirt collar. My palms, rough from roping and riding, brushed the engine block, heat lingering against the downpour's bite. "Try starting it," I called over the roar. The key turned. Nothing but a click. Then silence, broken by distant thunder rumbling closer, vibrating through the ground like a warning from the earth itself. I checked the connections again, sparks jumping faint when I tested voltage. Dead. The storm's edge pressed in, wind whipping sagebrush flat. "It's no good," I said, slamming the hood down. Rain lashed my face, cold as regret. "Won't hold till morning, let alone town." She wiped her face, eyes meeting mine in the dying light, searching, vulnerable. The ranch felt smaller now, its vastness a cage. Thunder rolled nearer, promising flood and fury. The click echoed hollow in the gathering dark, like a door slamming on hope. Night dropped fast out here, swallowing the horizon in one gulp, stars hidden behind the bruise of clouds. I stood there, rain sluicing off my hat brim, watching Lena's face crumple just a fraction. The truck was done, undrivable, a hunk of metal stranded like bleached bones in the wash. I scanned the land, my land, stretching empty under the storm's threat. 20 miles to Willow Creek, easy on a dry day. But now? The county road would flood first, turning to a river of red mud that swallowed tires whole. No neighbors close enough to call, no signal to ping for help. The nearest rancher was Old Harlan, 3 ridges over, but his phone line snapped like twigs in wind like this. Isolation wasn't a flaw here, it was the point. I'd chosen it after the divorce, after the city chewed me up and spat me out, leaving scars that itched in the quiet. This place healed slow, like soil after drought, patient, unyielding. But Lena didn't know that. She shivered, arms hugging her sides, water pooling at her boots. What now? Her voice cut through the patter, small against the wind's low moan. Is there a service or something? I shook my head, water flying. Nothing tonight. Storm's coming hard. Roads will be gone by morning. The words hung heavy, like the air before a flash flood. Duty clawed at me, familiar as barbed wire through gloves. You don't leave strays to the wolves out here, not even city ones with polished boots. But inviting her in? That meant sharing the cabin's walls, the fire's warmth, the silence I'd built my days around. Solitude was my breath, steady and deep, broken only by the wind's whisper or a coyote's call. Her presence would fill it, like smoke from a greenwood fire, choking, insistent. She stepped closer, rain masking the plea in her eyes. "Please, I don't have anywhere else. The truck's all I got, and it's dead. I can't just stand here all night." Her hands twisted together, knuckles white again, not from gripping the wheel this time, but from the cold seeping bone deep. Vulnerability cracked her voice, a fissure in dry clay, letting something raw seep out. Lost, she said earlier, but it ran deeper. City escape, she'd hinted. I saw it in the way she glanced at the endless scrub, like it might swallow her whole. My gut twisted, solitude warring with the rancher's code. Turn her away, and what? She'd huddle in the cab, rain drumming like accusations, maybe catch her death in the chill. Or worse, try the road and end up in a ditch, washed out to sea. No. The cabin sat a half-mile back, lantern light faint through the trees, promising dry boards and a cot in the corner. Temporary. That's what I'd make it. "All right," I said, voice rough as gravel. "You can stay the night. Cabin's got a spare room, but that's it. No more." Boundaries firm, like fence posts driven deep. I wasn't opening the gate wide, just cracking it enough for the storm to pass. Her relief washed over her face, quick as a sunbreak, but I held my ground, arms crossed against the pull. She nodded fast. "Thank you, really. I won't be any trouble." We trudged back together, her steps splashing beside mine, the wind whipping harder now, bending grass like it bowed to no one. I pointed out the essentials, her bag from the truck, a slicker from the shed to drape over her shoulders. "Grab what you need. We'll sort the truck come dawn." The cabin loomed ahead, its outline sharpening in the downpour, a reluctant shelter against the night closing in. Wind howled through the pines, carrying the scent of wet pine and promise of thunder as we pushed toward the door. The door creaked open under my hand, a low groan like old timber settling after a long day. Warm firelight spilled out, cutting the storm's chill like a knife through fog. Outside, rain lashed sideways, wind howling through the pines like a pack on the hunt, But inside, the cabin held steady. Log walls breathing with the heat from the stove, the air thick with the scent of dry wood and faint coffee from earlier. Lena stepped in behind me, dripping water in a trail across the threshold, her slicker shedding like a second skin. She paused there, eyes wide, taking in the space as if it might bite. I hung my hat on the peg by the door, shaking off the wet like a dog after a swim. "Make yourself at home. Not much, but it's dry." The words came out gruffer than I meant, a shield against the way her presence already filled the room. The cabin was mine alone, simple, spare. A main room with the kitchen corner, the stove squatting in the center like a watchful elder, and off to the side, the door to the spare room I'd nailed shut years ago, but could crack open now. Books stacked on a shelf by the window, a worn armchair facing the fire, the floorboard scarred from boots and time. Solitude had shaped it, every corner quiet, every surface touched only by my hands. She shrugged off the slicker, hanging it careful on a hook, her jacket underneath clinging damp to her frame. Water beaded on her skin, catching the fire's glow. This place, it's like stepping into another world. Her voice softened, almost lost in the patter against the window panes. She moved to the guest chair, an old rocker by the hearth, its weave frayed but sturdy, and sank into it slow, like testing ice over a creek. Her boots left mud prints, and she glanced down, apologetic. "Sorry, I'll clean that." "Don't worry." I crossed to the stove, grabbing the poker from its stand. The fire needed stoking. Embers glowed red, but the chill seeped in with us. I knelt, adding split logs from the stack beside, pine and oak, dry as bone, crackling to life as flames licked up. Heat bloomed, pushing back the storm's breath, but it couldn't touch the knot in my chest. She watched me, silent at first, her damp clothes steaming faint in the warmth. The scent hit then, wood smoke curling thick and resinous, mingling with the rain-soaked earth on her, wet wool and something sharper, like city streets after a downpour, asphalt and exhaust clinging to her hair. I stood, brushing soot from my palms, and nodded toward the kettle on the hook. "Tea or coffee if you prefer?" It was habit, offering what little I had, but saying it felt like cracking the door wider than I wanted. "Tea sounds good. Thanks." She rubbed her arms, goose flesh rising under the thin fabric. As the water heated, kettle humming low, she glanced around again. "So, this is your ranch? Just you out here?" I poured hot water over the leaves in 2 mugs, the steam rising like mist off a morning field. Handed her one, our fingers not quite touching, but close enough the air between hummed. "Yeah, been mine 5 years. Run cattle mostly, small herd, enough to keep the place going." I didn't say how the land had called me after the split, how the endless sky and scrub had mended what the city broke, piece by quiet piece, or how the work, the mending and riding, filled the days so nights didn't echo empty. Instead, I leaned against the counter, sipping my own, the bitterness grounding me. "What about you? Heading somewhere specific or just driving?" She cradled the mug, heat seeping into her hands, color returning to her cheeks. "Escaping mostly. City job, marketing. Endless meetings, noise everywhere. Felt like I was drowning in it. Heard about some artist retreat up north, thought the drive might clear my head." Her laugh was short, self-mocking, like wind rattling a loose shutter. "Turns out the road had other plans. Name's Lena, by the way, if you didn't catch it earlier." I nodded, finally offering mine. "Riley." It hung there, simple as a fence post, but saying it aloud felt like giving ground. The fire popped, sending sparks up the flue, and outside, thunder grumbled distant, a low roll that vibrated the floor. We sat like that, sipping in the glow, her in the rocker, me on the stool by the stove. Small talk flowed uneven, her mentioning the retreat's promise of quiet hikes, me hinting at the ranch's rhythms, how dawn came early and dusk brought peace. But under it, tension coiled tight. The space, so vast in my mind, shrank with her in it. Every creak of the chair, every shift of her foot, pressed against my solitude like roots cracking stone. Too close. Her breath sinking with the fire's draw, her eyes catching mine over the mug's rim. The cabin's walls, rough-hewn and familiar, now felt like they hemmed us in, the storm outside mirroring the one building slow inside. Lightning flashed sudden, white and jagged through the window, thunder cracking hard on its heels. The power flickered, bulb in the ceiling winking once, twice, then died, plunging the room into firelight only, shadows leaping long across the logs. Lightning cracked again, splitting the sky like an axe through dry timber, illuminating the cabin in stark white for a heartbeat. Then the rain hit, hard, relentless, hammering the tin roof like fists pounding out a warning. Each drop thudded with force, turning the world outside to a blurred gray curtain, wind shoving against the walls as if testing their strength. The fire held steady, but the sudden dark wrapped around us, shadows twisting long on the log walls, flickering with every gust that rattled the panes. I moved quick. Habit from too many nights like this. From the drawer by the stove, I pulled matches and candles, stubs of beeswax I'd traded for at the county fair, their wicks blackened from use. One by one, I lit them, placing them on the mantel and the rough-hewn table, flames steadying the gloom. The light softened the edges, casting Lena's face in warm gold, her eyes reflecting the dance of shadows like distant stars caught in a puddle. She sat still in the rocker, hands clasped tight in her lap, the storm's roar filling the space between us. "Gets wild out here," I said, voice low to cut through the din. But the cabins held worse. She nodded, but her gaze flicked to the window, where rain sheeted down, blurring the pines into ghosts. Thunder rolled next, deep and bone-shaking, vibrating the floorboards under our feet. The air felt charged, heavy with ozone and the faint tang of wet earth seeping through cracks. My solitude usually welcomed storms. They matched the quiet churn inside, a release without words. But now, with her here, it pressed different, like the wind finding a loose shingle and prying it free. Hunger gnawed faint, the work outside burning it up. I rummaged in the pantry, pulling beans from a pot still warm on the back of the stove. Cornbread I'd baked that morning, now sliced thick. Simple fare, the kind that sticks through long nights. "Eat something," I offered, setting a plate before her on the small table, another for myself across from it. The candles guttered as I sat, thunder breaking the silence like a shout. She picked at the food slow, fork scraping tin, the storm's rhythm syncing with our breaths. Inhale with the wind's howl, exhale as rain eased a beat. "It's not just the truck," she said sudden, voice barely above the patter, eyes on her plate. Thunder boomed again, closer, shaking the rafters. She set the fork down, hands trembling just enough to notice. "I'm lost. Really lost. Left the city because everything felt wrong. Job I hated, people who didn't see me. Thought the road would fix it, point me somewhere real. But now, stranded here, in the middle of nowhere." Her words hung, raw as exposed roots after a flood, vulnerability cracking through her city polish. She looked up then, firelight catching the sheen in her eyes. Not tears, but close, like dew on sage before dawn. I chewed slow, the cornbread dry in my mouth, watching her. The cabin's walls loomed in the candle glow, logs fitted tight but scarred from years of weather, knots and splits like the barriers I'd built inside. Solitude had been my refuge, walls high against the hurt of before, when love had withered like crops in blight, leaving me to tend the land alone. Her admission echoed that, a mirror in the dim, showing how isolation could cage as much as protect. The storm hammered on, rain like accusations. But in the shared flicker, those walls felt thinner, the space between us warming like embers under ash. The wind howled louder, whipping branches against the side, pulling the talk deeper as thunder faded to a growl. The fire crackled steady now, flames chewing through the logs with a low, insistent pop that filled the lulls between thunder's retreat. Heat radiated from the hearth, pulling us nearer like gravity on a hillside after rain, slow, inevitable. I shifted my stool closer, the wooden legs scraping faint on the floorboards, chasing the warmth that seeped into my bones but couldn't quite touch the chill settling deeper. Lena did the same, her rocker creaking as she leaned forward, elbows on knees, mug cradled in her hands like a lifeline. The candles had burned low, wax pooling in shallow dishes, their light merging with the fire's glow to paint her face in shifting amber. Outside, the wind howled on. But in here, The storm felt distant, a rumble echoing our own unspoken churn. She broke the quiet first, voice soft against the fire's draw. "This place suits you, Riley. The way you move in it, like you've earned every inch." Her eyes held mine, steady, not prying but seeing. It unnerved me, that gaze, like sunlight hitting a hidden spring, drawing out what I'd buried under layers of routine. I poked at the embers, sparks rising like fleeting thoughts. The land had taught me its lessons hard. Fences mended after blizzards, calves lost to coyotes, summers where drought cracked the earth open. But the real break had come years back, with Mara. We'd built something here, or tried, her city dreams clashing against the ranch's pull until she left one dawn, truck kicking dust down the drive, taking the last of my trust with her. The heartbreak lingered like frost on wire, numbing but persistent, teaching me solitude's sharp comfort. "The land doesn't give easy," I said finally, voice rough as split rail. "Lost a partner to it once. She wanted more. Lights, crowds, the rush. I stayed. Figured the quiet was enough." The words tasted like ash, but saying them aloud cracked something loose, like thawing ice on a ridge. Lena's mug paused midway to her lips, steam curling faint. She set it down, the clink soft. I get that pull to escape. City was my cage, endless grind, faces blurring in meetings, nights alone in a high-rise staring at concrete canyons. Felt like I was fading, piece by piece, until nothing real touched me. Her fingers traced the mug's rim, slow circles, mirroring the fire's swirl. She'd fled that for the road, chasing whispers of rural peace, an artist retreat promising open skies and time to breathe. But the drive had unraveled her, mile by mile, until the truck gave out and dumped her here, in my world of scrub and storm. Thought the quiet would fix me. Turns out, it's louder than I remembered. Echoes everything you run from. The parallel hit like a cold gust through a cracked window. Both of us, drawn to isolation's embrace. The way it wrapped tight like fog in a valley. Hiding hurts, but starving the soul. I'd chosen the ranch for its vast silence. A buffer against the ache of connection gone sour. Yet nights stretched empty, wind whispering regrets through the eaves. She sought the same escape, trading urban clamor for open road, only to find the quiet amplified her voids, craving touch amid the hush, like parched soil yearning for rain. We sat there, fire popping between us, the warmth drawing confessions like sap from a tapped pine. Her words mirrored my own buried wants, the tension coiling tighter, unspoken need hanging heavy as storm air. I reached for the kettle on the hearth hook, refilling her mug first, tea leaves swirling dark. As I passed it back, our fingers brushed, accidental but electric, skin grazing like dry brush sparking flint. Heat bloomed not just from the mug, but from that point of contact, lingering a beat too long before I pulled away. She didn't flinch, just held my gaze, a flicker in her eyes like lightning's afterimage. The touch echoed, subtle as a root pushing through stone, hinting at the connection we both chased and feared. Thunder built again outside, peaking with a crack that shook the walls, wind slamming rain against the panes like a demand. The chill seeped in sharper, drafts curling around our ankles, forcing us to huddle closer to the hearth, shoulders nearly touching, the space between shrinking under the storm's press. We pulled blankets from the chest by the hearth, wool heavy and smelling of cedar, the kind that holds warmth like a closed fist. I draped one over Lena's shoulders first, the fabric settling rough against her damp shirt, then took my own, wrapping it tight around my chest. The fire fought the drafts, but the cold clawed in anyway, seeping through floor cracks like fingers probing for weakness. We shifted closer on the stools, knees almost brushing, the space between us shrinking to a breath's width under the storm's relentless push. Thunder rattled the panes again, a deep boom that vibrated my ribs, and I felt her lean in, not quite touching, but near enough her warmth cut through the chill like sunlight piercing low clouds. Her gaze caught mine then, steady and unflinching, holding in the fire's flicker. It wasn't prying, but pulling. silent like the tug of a current under still water, drawing me toward depths I'd avoided. I looked away first, poking at the logs to hide the heat rising in my face. But it lingered, that unspoken thread between us, taut as fence wire after a pull. The storm outside mirrored it all, wind tearing at the eaves, rain lashing wild, turmoil churning the air into something electric and raw. Inside, my unrest stirred the same, solitude cracking under her presence, the quiet I'd clung to now humming with what-ifs, like thunder echoing long after the flash. "What does this quiet mean to you, really?" I asked, voice low, the words slipping out hesitant as a first step on thin ice. The fire popped, embers shifting red, and I kept my eyes on it, afraid to see too much in hers. Out here, alone, it's not just the land, it's everything. She shifted under the blanket, the wool rustling soft, her knee grazing mine, accidental but staying there, a point of heat blooming through denim. It's safety, at first. Walls against the noise that drowned me back there. Her breath came even, but I heard the catch, like wind pausing before a gust. But lately, it feels like a trap. Empty rooms echoing louder than crowds. You build it to hide, but it starts hiding you too. She turned her head, gaze pulling mine back, and in that look I saw the parallel. Our isolations twining like roots under shared soil, both seeking peace but finding only the ache of absence. I nodded slow, the blanket's weight grounding me as the storm howled on, branches scraping the walls like nails on bone. Same for me. After Mara left, I poured it all into the ranch. Fences, feed, the endless fix. Thought work would fill the gaps. But nights like this, the quiet presses in, shows you what's missing. My words hung, raw as stripped bark, and I felt the pull stronger, her nearness a counter to the cold, bodies radiating heat that cut the air sharp. It started at my side where the blanket bridged us, spreading like warmth from sun-baked earth, making the space feel charged, alive with the storm's pulse. She reached out then, fingers brushing my arm under the wool, light, testing, like checking if a fence holds. And now, with someone here, does it change? Her voice dropped, intimate against the roar, eyes searching mine in the dim. The question hung, stirring the unrest deeper, turmoil outside whipping wind into frenzy while inside, my heart thudded steady, aware of every inch. The rise of her shoulder under the blanket, the faint scent of rain on her skin mixing with wood smoke, the way our breath synced in the hush between claps of thunder. Heat from her body sliced the cold, a line drawn clear, pulling me closer without a word. I didn't answer right away, just let the silence settle, heavy as sodden ground, the unspoken growing between us like storm clouds thickening. Lightning flashed bright, illuminating her face, lines soft in the glow, eyes holding that pull. And the power, already flickering faint earlier, died for good. The single bulb over the sink winked out, leaving only the fire's glow, shadows deepening on the walls, the hearth our sole anchor in the dark. Thunder shook the cabin hard, a deep shudder that rattled the timbers like roots tearing loose in a flash flood. The floorboards jumped under us, and Lena startled, her body pitching sideways into mine, shoulder slamming against my arm, the blanket slipping as she gripped for balance. Her warmth hit sudden, solid against the chill, her breath catching sharp in the fire's glow. I steadied her quick, my hand coming up to her shoulder, fingers splaying firm over the wool and the curve beneath. "Easy," I murmured, voice low against the roar, the word more instinct than thought. She didn't pull away. Her frame trembled faint, not just from the quake, but something deeper, like the ground shifting under long-buried stone. The touch lingered, my palm pressing steady, heat seeping through her shirt into my skin, grounding us both as the aftershock rumbled on. The firelight danced across her face, shadows carving hollows under her eyes, but her gaze lifted to mine, dark, searching, pulling me in like a riptide in a swollen creek. Words faltered there, hanging unspoken in the dim. No need for them when the air thickened with everything unsaid. The storm's fury outside felt like our own, wild, inevitable, pressing walls that had held too long. I saw it in her, the crack forming, vulnerability raw as exposed clay after downpour. Her hand rose slow, covering mine on her shoulder, fingers curling light but sure, tracing the calluses I'd earned roping fence in summer sun. The contact sparked quiet, not flame but ember, warmth blooming where our skins met under the blanket's fold. I didn't move, breath sinking with hers in the hush between thunder's retreat. Shallow draws, heavy with the scent of wood smoke and rain-soaked earth, clinging to us both. The space between shrank to nothing, her side flesh against mine now, the wool bridging us like sod after sodding a barren patch. Solitude's grip loosened, walls I'd built high as canyon rims, cracking like dry earth under first rain. Fissures letting light seep through, softening the hard lines I'd carried alone. She leaned in closer, forehead nearly brushing my jaw, the pull magnetic as iron to lodestone. "Riley," she whispered, my name a breath against my neck, carrying the weight of the night. The breakdown, the storm, the quiet we'd both chased into isolation. It undid me, that sound, stirring the ache I'd buried under ranch work and endless horizons. My free hand found hers under the blanket, fingers intertwining slow, deliberate, her palm cool but warming fast against my rougher one. We sat like that, hands locked, breaths mingling in the fire's dim, the world outside fading to a distant patter. Emotional release washed over me then, not flood, but steady seep, like groundwater rising after drought, filling cracks I'd thought sealed forever. Her presence filled the quiet not as intrusion, but as rain on parched soil, vital, renewing, turning barren to fertile without a word. The thunder eased a touch, rolling farther now, the rain shifting from hammer to steady drum on the roof. Wind still moaned through the pines, but softer, like a sigh after strain. We didn't speak, just held the moment, bodies angled close, the intimacy deepening in the glow. Her thumb stroking faint over my knuckles, my shoulder bearing her weight like it was meant to. The cabin felt smaller, warmer. The logs no longer barriers, but a frame around us, holding the spark alive as embers settled low. The rain softened then, easing from its furious drum to a gentle patter on the roof, like footsteps retreating after a long night's toil. Each drop tapped steady, a rhythm that lulled the cabin into hush, the wind's howl fading to a murmur through the pines. Embers in the hearth glowed low, pulsing red like the last heartbeat of the fire, casting a faint warmth that held the dark at bay. We stayed close, Lena's head resting light against my shoulder, her breath a soft current against my neck. No rush to move, no words to break the spell, just the quiet settling around us, thick as mist rolling off the ridge at dawn. Her fingers stayed laced in mine, loose now, but sure, the calluses on my palm pressing into her smoother skin. Vulnerability hung between us, not heavy, but shared, like two streams merging after rain, carrying scars downstream without drowning. I felt hers in the slight tremor of her hand, the city's grind, the escape that led her here, hopes frayed like rope ends after a hard pull. My own scars surfaced too, whispers in the dim. Mara's leaving, the land's unyielding lessons in loss. How solitude had armored me against more hurt. But tonight, with her near, those whispers turned to hope, faint as green shoots pushing through cracked soil after a soak. "I never thought I'd find this," she murmured, voice barely stirring the air, eyes on the embers. "Not out here, not like this." Her words carried the weight of past breaks, the city's concrete holding her back like barbed wire. But now, in the cabin's glow, they softened. Hope flickered in her tone, amid the scars. A chance to rebuild, piece by piece, without the noise that had buried her before. I squeezed her hand, the gesture small but anchoring, like tying off a fence line after mending. Me neither. Thought the quiet was all I needed. Turns out, it was missing something. My voice came low, rough from disuse, but true. The ranch had healed me slow, its vast silence a balm on old wounds. Yet empty stretches between chores had echoed hollow, like canyons after echo. Her presence filled it now, not with clamor but meaning, the way a single rain can turn dust to life, nourishing without overwhelming. Leaning into her, our sides pressed warm under the blanket, I realized it, This stranger, this interruption, patched the quiet's voids, turning isolation's weight to shared ground, solid underfoot. We shifted closer, her body fitting against mine, natural as saddle to horse. No need for more than the contact. Her shoulder under my arm, my free hand resting on her knee through the wool. Simple touches, tender as dawn light filtering through shutters. The embers popped once, sending a spark upward, and she sighed, the sound easing into the patter outside. Past scars lingered, faint aches like bruises from a fall. But hope wove through them now, whispers of mornings without running, nights without alone. The storm had stripped us bare, but in the aftermath, we rebuilt quiet, layer by layer. Her warmth a counter to the chill that had settled too long. Dawn crept in slow, gray light seeping through the window cracks, painting the walls in soft promise. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean, scented with wet pine and turned earth. We didn't stir much, just watched the light grow, hands still clasped, bodies leaned in the hearth's fading glow. Morning would bring decisions. The truck, the road, whether this spark held against daylight's pull. But the night held its truth, etched in the quiet we'd shared, a subtle promise hanging like dew on grass. Whatever came, we'd face it together. The land stretching wide, but no longer empty. First rays filtered through the window cracks, pale gold slicing the dim like fingers probing sodden ground after a long soak. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and sharp, scented with turned earth and pine sap rising in the warming light. I stirred slow, my body heavy with the night's weight. Lena's form still pressed warm against my side under the blanket's fold. We'd drifted off there by the hearth, embers long cold now, her head on my shoulder, breaths synced in the hush. Dawn crept in quiet, painting the log walls in soft gradients, the floorboards gleaming faint with dew tracked from our boots. Outside, the land breathed easy, scrub glistening, ridges sharp against a sky-washed blue. No trace of the fury, but puddles pooling in the yard. She woke with a soft inhale, eyes fluttering open to meet mine. Close enough I saw the flecks of green in the hazel, like moss on sunlit stone. No jolt of surprise, just a slow smile curving her lips, tentative as a fawn testing legs. "Morning," she murmured, voice husky from sleep and storm, her hand shifting in mine, fingers tightening, brief, a silent anchor. I nodded, thumb tracing her knuckle, the callus there rough against her skin. The cabin felt different in the light, not hemmed but open, the night's confessions lingering like mist lifting slow. We sat up together, blankets pooling at our waists, the chill nipping at exposed arms, but chased by shared warmth. Her hair fell loose now, tangled from the wind, catching the rays in wild strands. "Storm didn't take the roof," I said, glancing out the pane where the pines stood straight, needles dripping steady. Practicality pulled me then, the ranch's rhythm calling, cattle to check, fences to eye for washouts. But reluctance rooted me, heavy as mud on boots, the thought of her leaving twisting like wire in my gut. "We'll get to the truck soon. Battery cables in the shed, should jury-rig it enough for town." Words came measured, testing the air, but my gaze held hers, searching for the same pull. She nodded but didn't move, her free hand rising to tuck a strand behind my ear, touch light as breath on water. And after, the retreat, it's waiting. Her voice carried the question unspoken, vulnerability threading through like roots seeking hold. I covered her hand with mine, holding it there against my cheek, the warmth grounding against Dawn's cool. The connection we'd forged burned steady now, stronger than the solitude I'd clung to like dry dock and flood. Out here, alone had been my shield, the land's vast quiet, mending breaks I'd thought permanent. Mara's shadow fading under endless chores, nights filled with wind's low song instead of empty echoes. But Lena's arrival had cracked that wide open, her presence turning isolation to something vital, like rain filling arroyos long cracked. We both craved the hush, yet together it hummed alive. Shared glances over mugs, brushes of skin in tight space. The storm stripping barriers to reveal what we'd hidden. Hope bloomed in that. Not wild, but rooted. Promising mornings without the ache of alone. Days laced with touch that fit natural as saddled back.
We rose then, slow, folding blankets with care, the motions drawing us close again. Her hip grazing mine as we stacked wood by the stove, my arm brushing her back when I handed her a mug of water from the pump. Breakfast was simple. Biscuits from yesterday, cheese sliced thick, eaten at the table with the light strengthening, casting long shadows across the grain. Talk flowed gentle. Plans for the fix, her route north, but laced with pauses heavy with want, eyes meeting over crumbs. Reluctance hung thick, neither rushing the door, the pull to linger stronger than the road's call. Finally, we stepped out, air crisp and alive, the yard muddied but cleared, sagebrush upright in the sun. Hands clasped tight, we walked toward the truck, her palm warm in mine, the land stretching wide before us, hills rolling green-tinged, sky endless. In that grasp, the world felt full, solitude yielding to something shared, solid as the earth underfoot. The image burned in, us standing there, fingers linked, looking out at the ranch reborn in morning light, connection etched deep as canyon scars. The truck coughed to life at last, engine rumbling steady under the hood, but our hands stayed linked, hearts tethered tighter than any tow chain. If this quiet spark resonates, share your story below, and subscribe for more Sapphic tales from the land.